Hello, this is Dan Grabois with my podcast. And before we get started with the interview, I've been groping for a name for the podcast, tried a couple things out, and I think I'm now settled on $2 Broom. It comes from a lyric by the great musician, lyricist, and artist Don Van Vliet, who performed under the name Captain Beefheart. The text is, "What this world needs is a good $2 room and a good $2 broom." So $2 Broom it is. Welcome to $2 Broom. And today my guest is Jean Laurenz. Jean, hello.
Hello. Happy to
Thanks
be
so much
here.
for talking with me. So Jean is my colleague at UW-Madison, and she's the professor of trumpet, but she does lots more than trumpet. And we will be getting into that. She's one of the most creative musicians and really people that I've come across in my career. And so we're going to be largely talking about creativity, how you can be creative, how you can get out of any kind of a box you find yourself in, what it means to create new things. So let's start with a little background, Gene. You trained as a trumpet player, but I think there was more to your education than that. So can you take us through some of that?
Yeah, sure. I went to Northwestern and I studied trumpet performance and also choral music education. So I have a singing background and also very interested in education at large, any age. Yeah, and then I've performed professionally as a vocalist and as a trumpet player, although I consider myself mostly a trumpet player.
Do you still sing for money?
For money. It depends. I put vocals into my projects. And now whether or not those are lucrative, but mostly no, I don't do vocal gigs. I don't. There are plenty of incredible vocalists out there. Let's leave space for them. But I do instill voice in everything that I do related to trumpet and creative projects.
That's great. So you have had a lot of projects. I can't remember how many years you've been in Madison now. You got tenure last year. How long have you been here?
I joined in 2019, so about
Okay.
7 years.
So you joined the faculty and then got to go through the pandemic shutdown for a
Yeah.
couple of years.
Yep.
Okay, well, congratulations on the tenure. That's a huge milestone for any professor, and you deserve it so much. So, really, congratulations on that. The big project that you did before getting tenure was your show Descended, which was a movie first and then became a show, and it won many, many awards. Can you talk about Descended and also, in the process, let people know how they can watch Descended online? And I can also put that link in the notes.
Yeah, sure. Well, Descendant actually didn't start as a film. It had a first iteration, um, and then it became a film because of the pandemic, largely. But I'll tell you what it is now, and then its genesis. Now it is a mostly it's a multimedia theatrical performance piece. So we say it's part chamber music, part theater, part visual projection art, and it tells the story of it embodies the stories of Lafcadio Hearn, who was a famous writer who lived in Japan and wrote sort of or documented and interpreted the grim fairy tales of the East, so Japanese and Chinese ghost and folk stories. He wrote them down, brought them to Western culture, and he also happens to be my great great uncle. So I've grown up knowing about him, and I wanted to realize his work through music and in collaborative arts. And so we created this. Basically, it's a piece of theater, but it's a small 50-minute work that runs through, and the music was commissioned to tell his stories, a selection of six stories. Um, and now in its current form, it actually some of the projection art um, in, incorporates the film. And so it also stands alone as a 27-minute art film that can be shared, and it's existed in film festivals and even, at times in museums. the goal is to share the film with art museums or any sort of art space where people might be able to sit down for 30 minutes and experience it in full. And then before that, the beginning of it was just a commission for a performance piece, more focusing though on chamber music. So I was commissioning the music first, and then adapted stage movement and visuals. And I commissioned an organization called Masari Studios, whom I had seen in Boston, and I loved their work. And when I was thinking about how to embody Lafcadio Hearn's writings, I was originally just going to do a piece of music that I commissioned and recorded. But in the process of thinking of who I wanted to work with, I remembered this group of people, specifically Maria Finkelmeyer. I loved working with her and her music that she created for the original Genesis project. And so it started that in that form, and then the pandemic hit, and then I started working solely with Maria to create a film. And then we worked with 410 Media, who were also the directors of editing and creating the beautiful visuals for the film. And then I worked with Maria Finkelmeyer, Greg Jukes, and an artist named Juan to create the multimedia projection art and electronics and performance piece. So it's been a long journey, and now it stands in sort of three different forms. There's an album, there's a video, and then there's an active performance piece.
So you are still actively performing the piece?
Yeah, yes, we are looking to book it in various locations. It's a weird fit because there are concert series for chamber music, and it doesn't really fit there. There are organizations who hire small theater productions, and it kind of fits there, but it's a hard to pitch because there's actually no dialogue outside of a few spoken quotes. It's a through run piece of like motion and music and visuals, and so there's no script. So it's hard to find the place where it fits, and we're working on finding those communities. But I just won the Creative Arts Award to book it, and we're realizing that the biggest way to push it forward is to actually get grants to perform it instead of asking people to kind of hire us for their series until we find its home in the kind of organization that we can work with. And that's where we are in the process now.
Congratulations on that award. That's a really big deal, and I was so happy to see that you had won that.
Thank you.
So it sounds, I have many questions about this, but it sounds like it's sort of a black box theater kind of when it's live. That's the kind of venue you would do it in, but you could potentially do it in a church or in a classroom or a large classroom or maybe a high school auditorium. I mean, is it transportable?
It is transportable, but there needs to be a baseline of tech available to us because we have a lot of different media involved in, we have projection, and so we need a really good projector. We also need a space that can get really dark. We also need the ability to have like in-ear mics that can be balanced with our electronic sounds and our acoustic instruments. So there's actually a pretty high demand for tech. But we have performed it, in black box theater. That's where it finds its happiest home. But we did perform it at the Smithsonian Museum of Asian Art. And that is just a stage with some simple tech, some simple lighting. And we adapted the actual motion and movement of the piece to fit in a smaller, like lower tech heavy space. And that worked well. So it is malleable to a certain degree. If we were to perform like at a high school, we would probably just do the music by itself and perform it as a sort of chamber concert.
So you didn't write the music specifically, but you had commissioned these composers that you mentioned, and they wrote the music.
Yeah, I
But
commissioned. Oh, sorry.
well, I was going to ask what you mentioned various collaborations on the art, the music. What was your role as the sort of director of the whole project? What were you actually sitting in your music studio thinking about and doing?
Good question, because part of the answer is I don't know. It's been such a journey, and um, it, I am the visionary. I am the person who brings the core central ideas. I am the person who has the arc and the narrative, which is the backbone. All three or four, if you want to count every way that it's existed, has had a very intentional narrative arc that involves Lafcadio Hearn and his stories, and that's where I am central. I'm also kind of like the executive producer, in addition to in one of the artistic directors. Um, I I kind of now at this point share artistic direction with Maria Finkelmeyer, and also Greg Jukes, because the three of us in the bigger theatrical performance piece really brought so many ideas together. And it was like a perfect alchemy, in collaboration. And so I have actually kind of given up that artistic director with a capital A D um, title because of how much creative energy Maria and Greg have put into it. And then for clarity, I commissioned um, Maria Finkelmeyer specifically for the current edition. She is the writer of the music, and I did write one piece called Urishima's Boat. It's pseudo improvisatory, but I did kind of create that moment of the piece because it had a very specific story connection and a very specific um, transition within the show. So I wanted to write that piece. But Maria is the one who wrote the score and gets the credit for the music making. Um, and then, yeah, my role has been different in every pillar of the project. I would say for the film, I was the narrative, and I was the prioritization of the vision, and 410 Media built the direction of the visuals. Um, and then it was always a collaboration where I was always pressing to insert more Lafcadio Hearn into every scene, into everything we did, making sure to preserve the core inspiration for the project at large. And the same is true for all the other parts of the project.
So you're really a shapeshifter because you have inhabited so many different roles in the project. You thought of the project, but meanwhile, you're also teaching trumpet students. You and I have played chamber music together since 2020. So you're a very active chamber musician. You played for a number of years in the Seraph Brass. I know you work some with the Madison Symphony. So you have a lot of different roles, and it seems like you are comfortable having different roles. I wonder if it's an entirely a positive thing for you. Does it feel like you wish you had some anchoring, or maybe your teaching job is your day job, which anchors you? Or I've had similar feelings where in my career where I've done many different things, and to me that feels really good, and I play in a group that's uncategorizable, and that feels really good, but it can be very frustrating as well. Like I imagine when when an interviewer asks you about the Descended movie, it's kind of hard to describe. It's not like anything else.
Right. Yeah. Great question. I have two analogies as an answer. Um, I have always described my career and just my general artistry with the analogy of snowballs. um, I I remember feeling a little out of place in undergrad, where everybody around me was really focused on orchestral trumpet playing. That's what was celebrated around me, and so I was realizing that everybody just wanted to make one big snowball. If a snowball represents skill, they wanted to make one big snowball in the form of trumpet playing and orchestral musicianship. Um, and everybody was kind of rolling their snowball, but I was, doing choral music ed and trumpet performance and singing in a cappella group and, already doing some of this collaborative arts, interdisciplinary work. And I kind of had this epiphany later after being down on myself for seeing these people grow so fast and so much on the trumpet that I am a person who builds a wall of smaller snowballs. So I have decided wholeheartedly that I would rather have my snowball of trumpet, which is my original craft. It's the core craft. It's still the biggest snowball in my arsenal, but around it, I've built a sort of wall of mini snowballs in the form of different skills. So I'm a singer. Um, I guess you can say now that I'm a director. I love interdisciplinary and collaborative work, a curator of collaboration, um, a teacher. I have loved and adored teaching every age, and so I've I've had to realize that I will never actually live up to the trumpet potential that I have because I am dedicating more time to these other skills. And I'm at peace with that. Although I'm always striving and pushing to grow my trumpet snowball. Um, and I think then from realizing the way I want my wall to look, that it's varied and full of smaller skills, then I can prioritize my time. And I think of time, here's the second analogy, as like a pie chart or a piece of pie. And I just want to make sure that the majority of my focus is going to the piece of pie that's the most fulfilling. So there are many fulfilling things in my life. I adore teaching. I absolutely love playing trumpet in every context, but specifically chamber music. But most important to me is the process of creating these interdisciplinary projects. And and so making sure as I look forward to the future that I'm prioritizing that and my trumpet craft, and then finding time to fill in the rest of my like pie chart with other things that matter, but there will be more time put into the things that give me energy. And I used to be obsessed with time management, but now I'm obsessed with energy management, like what gives back the most. And my students give back a lot. I leave a teaching day elevated in energy most days, when I have really great lessons. And so I'm trying to balance, like, where do I put all my energy? How do I prioritize that in terms of time and in terms of what to bring into my life and what to say no to? And now that I'm a mother, that's a big piece of pie right now. So I'm saying no to a lot right now, and I'm using the time to clarify what my new pie chart is going to look like. So hopefully that answers your question. No, it never feels like a burden, but I don't. I play in orchestras when I can, and it fills my cup. But it fills my cup to a certain point, and then I can go a long time and not play in orchestra again. But I wouldn't say the same is true for chamber music. I need more frequent chamber experiences to fill my cup.
It strikes me that it takes a lot of courage to follow a direction like this. I received a liberal arts degree in college, and the idea with a liberal arts degree is it's not job preparation, it's kind of humanity building, and then you can figure out the job side of it later. I was a little bit unusual in that I knew I wanted to become a musician, but I wasn't in music school. But even then, there was never the idea that you could go do a lot of different things and have a career built out of lots of snowballs. And I suspect at Northwestern even less so, because it very much is a school that's driven by placing its graduates in orchestras to the extent possible, training them for auditions and that sort of thing. So where did you get or maybe it didn't seem courageous to you, maybe it just felt like the natural thing to spread out and say, wow, this thing seems interesting, and so I'll try it.
Um, Grad school is the short answer. Actually, a little bit in undergrad, but there are a few things that alleviated fear. I was a very fearful youth. I come from a family of people in the health industry and engineers, and so going into the arts was daunting, and I was always worried if I was going to make it. Um, but I'm also very sensitive and aware of my experience and energy. And so in undergrad, my first encounter with authenticity and putting my energy into something that gives back was my senior recital. It was the first time I brought my a cappella group in. I conducted a small choir. I played trumpet, but collaborated with a dancer. and brought this piece to life visually. And so every piece represented something that was important to me on my senior recital. And when I saw how moved people were by that, I realized that not only was it fun to put that recital together because it was authentic for me, but it moved people more than your average trumpet recital. And so I started to get that feeling of like, oh, this is worth it. It's worth branching off in this way. But, school is the time to do that. It's the time to experiment. And I started doing that, and then I did a whole bunch of it in graduate school. I made, half my living singing and started arranging different things, singing and playing pop music. And Yale, was where I went to graduate school, was an incredible place to that where I could kind of plant those newer roots. I could have done that at Northwestern. Everybody would have been very supportive of me, but I would have been a total outlier where at Yale, that was the norm for the people I hung out with. And then there's one other part to it. Because I'm a fearful person and because having stability was essential and has always been essential for me, I can't be creative if I'm worried about basic life needs. I got that choral music ed degree, and it wasn't a fallback degree. I wanted to get an education degree, but if there's a few times in life that's worth kind of pushing yourself to the max, undergraduate is one of them. And I chose to push myself with breadth, not with focus. So I didn't push myself to the max with trumpet specifically, but I did with double majoring in choral music ed and trumpet performance. And I definitely spread myself thin, but it was worth it for me because I walked away with this guarantee that I could be an educator in a public school system. And I did do that for 1 year after my undergraduate, and I liked it. I worked with elementary students, and I loved it. So that confidence that I could be employed was there for me. And so I think if anybody else is listening to this and has that fear, I think there might be a time or two in life to push yourself to the max. And then, for your own sake, ease up and find the space to play around and find out who you are. But there's like the slinky, the push and pull of life. Sometimes you got to grind and sometimes you got to have space.
Did you find when you came to UW-Madison that the breadth you wanted to explore was supported? Did it feel like a good home? Did you have to fight and kind of cling to your goals, or what did it feel like being here? Part one, and part two. Do you bring this kind of stuff to your students, and how receptive are they? And again, do you feel like the university is receptive to your teaching in this way, which is certainly not the standard way to teach a brass instrument, where almost all students are thinking about orchestral playing?
I think UW-Madison is rare in that I did not experience resistance with my unique approach to making music and art. Quite the contrary. Everybody around me in the brass area was already doing that, already pushing the boundaries. And um, yeah, I felt complete support the whole time. I don't think anybody ever batted an eye at the uniqueness of Descended because that was my core thesis for my tenure project, and it's where I used all my research funding, and everybody was always supportive. For the most part, you're always going to get a diverse set of people, and not everybody is going to buy your narrative, your story, but I didn't feel resistance in that way. And so for that reason, it was an incredible place to be, a place that supported chamber music, a place that really supports out of the box thinking and product making. And yeah, I was already doing all the things that I do here at UW-Madison before I came. I was living in Boston and New York. I had, two places. And I was in a brass quintet that was all about bringing stories and music together and sharing interviews of really interesting people and pairing it with music. I was doing that creative work. I was playing with Seraph Brass. I was teaching through Handel and Haydn Society, and bringing like a teaching artistry sort of part of my employment. I was a teaching artist, and I was doing all of these things, but managing the schedule was really hard because not it was not all synthesized, and so I had to really manage, availability for different projects. But when I came to UW, I could do all of the things I love under one umbrella, and that was the job description. So it just suddenly felt really cohesive. And then there's this additional support of this incredible institution and amazing musicians and artists all around me, so that my community exploded. And then to answer the second part of the question, yes, I absolutely bring it to my students every semester. Um, I ask for an archival project. And so the students have to deliver something that is archivable, meaning there's a digital footprint of it. Specifically, they can put it on their website. And so that when they come in, they have to make a website. That's their first archival project. And then from there, they have to really think about their artistry and the kinds of activities within music making that bring them energy. And they have to create something. It could be as simple as creating a video recording of themselves playing a standard piece, or it could be a new composition with collaborative artists that are hired and this crazy, interdisciplinary piece of art. But no matter what, it has to be archivable, and then they put it on their website. So by the time they leave UW-Madison, they have a website that displays all of who they are. They have, hopefully one requirement of the website is that they have a recording of themselves. And so if somebody asks for a trumpet player for a gig, I can say, here's their website. I recommend this person. But also, it's important that they, on their website, show not only how they have the skills to be hired, but how they separate how their niche, how they stand out from the crowd because they've created a few of these creative works. So a few examples are, right now I have a couple students creating an iwi, an electronic wind instrument, basically an electronic trumpet. And then I've had students write songs and create music videos. I've had a student create a comedy skit that involved the trumpet. And so there's a huge diversity in product that students deliver. And it's so fun every semester seeing what somebody can put together.
It's interesting to hear you describe your many different interests and then to saying that you could pursue all those interests under one roof. That's interesting to me because when people ask me why I took the job at UW-Madison, it was the exact same language that I used. One roof, lots of opportunity to do different things, lots of support for research. Now when I'm retiring in a few weeks, and so I'm kind of looking back at my career, and it feels to me like I never knew what the hell I was doing. I never knew what I wanted. I would just sit down, especially in the last few years, sit down in my electronic music studio and think, well, I have a grant to make a CD, so I need to make a CD. And just start playing an instrument and recording and seeing what happened. And then that would develop, and we can talk about the song that we did together, which is so funny, a little bit later. But eventually I would find something that I liked and build onto it until it became a song with really no prior vision on my part. And career-wise, I look back at my career and it feels the same. Some people I didn't know asked me to audition for their brass quintet, and I did, and they invited me to join, and that was in 1989. And I didn't even think I wanted to play in a brass quintet, and that developed into a whole huge part of my career. I have these 4 solo CDs that I made while in Madison, and only one of them had any planning at all. The other 3 were constructed in that way. So when I look back at the things that I've done, I think there's all of these energies that I was not controlling at all, and they resulted in this product, and that now I can say that was my career in Madison. I'm wondering if you feel a little more proactive, that you conceive of a plan and go out and you know exactly what you want to do, or do things happen to you and I guess I'm trying to ask, what does it feel like to be creative to you?
Oh, it's such a good question. Um, and I will honor the fact that I think being creative, it means scratching around in the dark a lot of the time. Um, for me, I don't have a clear image of the end goal. I I actually think it would be problematic um, to have a super clear vision unless you are a certain kind of director. Um, the like there's an artistic director, and maybe if you're producing a film and or directing a film, maybe that director has a very clear image of what they want and they can manifest it through their direction. For me, I maybe a better title would be more of like a collaborative director, where I say these are the core pillars that matter to me. Here is the end goal in terms of narrative and in terms of um, deliverable and focus. Here's what I want to fill in the empty space. And here is this baby that I'm giving you. Please take care of it. And then when I collaborate with somebody, I just have to give it to them. And um, I will say, making the film Descended was the most incredible creative experience because I had this kind of what I thought was a clear vision. And when I realized what the budget for that vision would be, it was completely beyond what I could offer. Um, 410 Media came to me with a kind of different approach, this kind of single film, short art film. And they had already built this idea of like the imagery and the scenes. And I freaked out because all of a sudden the project started feeling like it was leaving my hands. And what I realized in hindsight is that that was the most beautiful moment, educational moment for me in what I do because um, I had to trust them and I just trusted their artistry. And so then I said, okay, but this, and I kind of reinserted the priorities and the arc and the storyline. And then they created something wildly better than I could have ever imagined. And it felt so uncomfortable most of the time. And I think that's really important. So it's important to maybe not, for me, not to have a clear image, but to have a clear purpose and a clear story. When I say narrative, I really just mean like the story arc. And then very clear ideas of who you want to work with in terms of like their skill, but also their personhood. The people that I really get along with as people and are my dear friends are also the ones who deliver the products that I like the best. And so I think there's a sort of synergy that happens with the people you hire or you work with and collaborate with, and then this product turns into what it is. But so much of the process for me is kind of stumbling into a new world, seeing an option, building a story, and then going. I always tell my students that, especially students who are like, here's my 1 year goal, my 5 year goal, my 10 year goal, here's how I structure my day exactly, which is how I was. Your future will come to you as much as you go to it. And you have to apply for jobs. You have to apply for programs, apply for grants if you have a cool idea. But also just be in the world and spend your time doing things that give you energy and people will notice. And then, every major opportunity that I've had actually came to me without me seeking it. Seraph Brass came to me. UW-Madison, I didn't apply originally. It came to me. And so just by knowing people and being the person that I am, resulted in certain opportunities. But I also then really went after the things that I really wanted. Like, for example, I desperately wanted to do what is now called Ensemble Connect at Carnegie Hall because it was everything that I knew I did well. It was teaching, outreach, community service, performing in non-traditional spaces, creative project building, and they hire every 2 years. And when I was leaving my master's, it was an off year, and I was like, I want that. There was only one trumpet in opening, and so I stayed at Yale for another year and did an artist diploma. I put all of my effort into applying for that. and then I got it. And call it divine intervention, whatever. That was a moment where I really went after it, but then there are also many moments where it just landed in my lap. And it's not because I'm any like sort of, I'm just a hardworking person who has a mixture of talent and extreme work ethic and clear vision. I'm not, there are plenty of amazing trumpet players out there, but I really believe, it's like putting in the energy and then letting it come back to you.
It seems like one thing that maybe you and I have in common is that we're pretty comfortable with the phrase, I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah. Um, I've been trying to take off the armor slowly over decades of trying to be something that I'm not. Um, and I think the most important, there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom, and the wisest people say, I don't know all the time. So I know many, many people who are so incredibly smart. It's insane working at UW Madison. That just the intelligence around me is profound. And you can see somebody who's wildly smart, but still has the armor up of needing to be smart as a label. And the people who I see who are wise and smart are the ones who know a lot of things, but are the first to admit when they don't know. And the majority of their conversations are questions. So I'm trying to take a page from that book, and my kind of rule for myself right now, whether it's in a student's lesson or a conversation with a colleague or a new person, is like start with three questions. Unless, if they ask me about my dog, I'm not going to answer, well, how's your dog? But I'll answer, but then I really try to prioritize asking at least three questions before I start um, diving, into what I think is important, because you get a lot from somebody by asking a few well-intended questions.
When I got to college, one of the deans was meeting with a group of freshmen that I was in, and he said, this was right at the beginning, September, and we were freshmen, and he said, "Let me tell you how I've lived my life. I never imagined I'd be a college professor, but the opportunity to go to graduate school came about, and I hadn't really thought of that, but I thought that sounds like fun, so I'll do it." And then one by one, as opportunities presented themselves, if they sounded good to me, I would take them, even if they weren't part of my plan. And I did have a plan, but I was very comfortable deviating from that for something interesting. And he said, "Here's what I recommend for all of you. Think about what you really want to do and go for it hard. But then change course if changing course feels like that might be interesting and good and helpful to you." I've tried to do that. It sounds like that exactly describes what you've done as well.
Totally. Yeah, it just kind of got to start your walk and then, follow the scent. Um, my husband is a great example of someone who does this too. He has a PhD in astrophysics, but during graduate school, he started working with a professor who, focuses on small particles, and now he's a small particle physicist with a degree in astrophysics. And it's because the allure of this person and the research was interesting enough to pull. And I think one of the questions I hate the most that we ask children is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because I think it implies that there is an answer, a singular answer. And I think if we start asking, how do you like to spend your time? What gives you energy? What does a great day, week, and season look like for you? That will start building the internal like guidance system to follow what's interesting more than following a specific profession or title. Because I wasn't chasing professorship. I wasn't yet. I always wanted to get a DMA, but I wasn't chasing a DMA because I was too busy working. There were too many interesting things in my lab. So uh, that was kind of on my mind, but the opportunity didn't present itself, and so I just kept continued to follow the interest, and then of course you follow your interest, and then the world will come to you, and then it came to me, and so I yeah I think there is a beautiful lesson to be learned in following what is interesting, but also like keeping one pinky toe in the practical for me. Some people will say, go for it completely and wholeheartedly. And if you're not, then you're not going to make it. I don't
Those
agree
people
with
have not lived in New York City and paid
that.
rent.
Exactly, exactly. I always had I'm going to stay on this course, but this is what my life has to look like. I have to be stable in these areas, and I have to be saving a little bit of money. And if I cannot do that over the course of a year, then a red flag goes up. And so I had my guidance system that was keeping me practical, and then a guidance system that was keeping me engaged artistically. And those two things are very important to me personally.
And your ability to pivot.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Sorry,
yeah.
just one more thing. Pivoting doesn't seem so hard, though, when there's an opportunity, to pivot to. Pivoting is harder when you're stuck. That's my biggest fear, is getting stuck. I see people who get in a grind, and then like they feel like they can't get out of it because they haven't presented or looked for or sought a different opportunity, and then they kind of get stuck in the weeds, and it's hard to get out of. But that's why I think a big life change is be really good. I love moving to a new city to just kind of start anew, and then it allows you to kind of come up out of the grass and see the horizon a little bit, and that's also part of being able to pivot.
On our way out, I want to get your memories of the little song that we made up in my electronic music space, uh, because it was really funny, and I wonder if you remember it the same. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, sure. It's topical because of the name of the podcast, $2 Broom. I spent a summer, kind of playing when I could with your ensemble $2 Broom, and got to explore the electronics in your studio ears. And I was always gravitating towards the vocoder. I love just like this deep, rich hug of a sound that it can create.
This
Um,
this is a 1980s era vocoder that I was given when I opened the lab.
love it, and I love Bon Iver, and so I would always kind of gravitate there. And then I think it was maybe after a rehearsal, and we just decided to jam a little bit. And I was always like, I am so busy, I have to go do something. And Dan, you're always the one that's like, hey, like let's just do something. Let's play around. And um, I think I had just gotten a bidet. I think it was like on the mind. I can't remember if you were the genesis of the idea or if I was. Okay, so I that was the lyric that came to my mind. And Carpe Bidet is the name of the song.
Yep,
And,
seize the B-Day,
so yeah, yep. And
which is a great, I mean, seize the day is a known
yeah,
expression, so seize the B-Day is great, and then Latinizing it is great.
uh-huh.
And you totally went with it, and you were doing stuff on that vocoder that I don't know how you did it.
I don't know either. I was to keep the strain, I was scratching around in the dark. I am not a pianist. In the vocoder, you sing into the mic, but you use the piano to create, multiphonic accord with your vocals. And I was just kind of doing some basic music theory, piano chords, 1 4 5s with a few non-chord tones in there, and you know, we just kind of went with it. And what was your experience? What do you remember from it?
I remember that you were doing brilliant things on the vocoder, and I was just trying to support what you were doing and not ruin it. And I was playing the continuum fingerboard, the instrument I like playing the best. And it felt like we were in the zone. We
Hmm.
were not in each other's way. And improvising together can be really hard. I mean, it's a thing that I teach to the students that I teach electronic music improvisation to. It's like, go with what you hear or go against it, but have a relationship between you and the other people. So I was trying to do that, and while simultaneously being extremely amused by the lyric, since there's really only one line uh, that you came up with. So it was this great combination of humor and I don't know what's going on, but I like it, and let's just keep it going a little bit. And yeah, and then it wasn't long after we did that I just made, like, I put it together a little bit, a couple of cuts and edits and splices, and I thought the song was great and funny. I have no idea what other people's reaction is to it, but to me, it's like it's such a highlight.
It was so fun, and just to add like a little pedagogical moment, I remember now that we had come from a $2 Broom rehearsal, and in that one, sometimes the students are really listening to each other and reacting, and other times it's just a lot of people just playing at the same time. And you had given a speech, a lecture a little bit, like we got to listen. Here's an approach that we can take. Here's a new exercise we can use to open our ears more and play less and be more reactive. Um, and so this works for me all the time. And I tell my students, you know, if you hear something that you're not loving, do more of what you don't love to clarify what it is. And then go to the opposite end of the spectrum. And I think that was what allowed the zone to happen is we came from this kind of crunchy, like lots of people playing at the same time, and then we did something together after people left where we made more space and we let it evolve a little bit. I think we could do it again and let it evolve way more, because it's so fun and it's simultaneously beautiful and comical, and so together it just made a really cool product.
I'll put a link to the recording in the show notes here below. Thank you so much for speaking with me. It's been a really great conversation.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. It's always great to share time with you.